Hi, it's time for Module 6. We're going to take a look at plant names and why correct plant names really matter to you. Lots of plants have the same nickname, and lots of plants have several nicknames. The common yardweed ground ivy is also known as alehoof, creeping Charlie, creeping Jenny, and gill over the ground, just to name a few. Well, this can not only be confusing, but if someone were to harvest the wrong plant in the wild, it could also prove fatal. So it's very important to know that you've got the right plants. Now, people will say that a flower grows whether or not it knows its own name, and that's very true. But when you plan to eat what you grow, you better make sure that you're growing the right thing. You'll find that your herbs all have very different flavors, and some families like the mints and basils can have a lot of variety and taste. Now, I would like to go over an example or two from your handout just to make sure we've got it. We covered valerian, so let's start with that. Now, red valerian is a pretty ornamental herb. It's got beautiful pink flowers. Some people say it's edible, but mostly it's grown for the pretty flowers and foliage. The medicinal valerian looks very different from the red. The leaves look sort of spiky. The flowers are shaped and colored very differently than red valerian. Now, check out the Latin names of both. And remember, the first part of the plant name is capitalized, and it tells us the kind of plant or the sort of plant we are looking at. The second part of the name tells us something about the plant, maybe where it comes from or who discovered it, the color, and so on. Red valerian is a nickname. It's in the same family as true valerian, sort of like Chihuahuas, Poodles, and Great Danes all belong to the dog family. Completely different looking animals, though. Now, true valerian is actually named Valerian. Its first name, Latin name, is Valerian, and it has officinalis as the second part of its name. Now, do you remember that the second word tells us something about the plant? Well, here it tells us that this plant was used officially as a medicinal herb or an apothecary plant. Now, you can see how some plants might be confused with others. Leaves may look similar, but if you know those few things to watch for, you can learn to tell them apart pretty easily. You can look at your leaves and see the margins or the edges of the leaves, and you can see if they have teeth, if the edges are rounded, wavy, or smooth. And those are the margins, remember. You can also look at the textures of the leaves. Are they bumpy or rough? Are they smooth, hairy, silky, maybe velvety? Touch them and find out, except stinging nettle. That one really hurts. And take a look at the way the veins run through the leaves. You might find that some veins start at the stem or petiole and they run the entire length of the leaf, while other plants have veins that branch out across the leaf. Also, look at the way that the leaves attach to the plant. Leaves that have a stem attaching to the main stem have a petiole. Look to see how the leaves are arranged on the stem. Do they grow in pairs opposite one another, or do they grow alternately up the stem? Those are more clues for you. And you'll know as you start learning your plants, each one has its own particular way of growing. And some families grow very much alike. Mints are a good example of that. Stems will give you clues as well. Some are fuzzy, some are smooth, and some are rough. And remember the clue about the mint? Square stems tell you a plant is a member of the mint family. And that ground ivy that I mentioned early on, it's even a mint family member. Now, if you haven't looked at and touched your herbs enough to learn about them, it's time to start sniffing. So you can break off a leaf, rub it or crush it between your fingers, and smell it. Most smell absolutely wonderful. Each has their own fragrance and aroma, and looking, touching, smelling, and tasting your herbs really are the very best way to get to know them.